Hi guys, good morning. It's Mitch here. Welcome back to my channel. This is now the first week of February and I just swapped out all of the other orchids that were blooming in my last What's Blooming video because they're all starting to fade and I put them back into the growing area. Luckily now we have a whole bunch of new ones that are starting or coming into bloom. So I'm just gonna do a quick What's Blooming Today video. It's the first week of February. We're having a big snowstorm slash wintry weather this week here on the West Coast. So it's kind of nice to have the fire going and all of my flowers blooming inside. I grew up in Ontario. We used to have really bad winters like I remember, and I always really loved growing houseplants inside. It just made me feel, I don't know, like protected, and it brought me a lot of pleasure to see these really beautiful tropical plants blooming inside while outside it was cold and snowy. And I still get that feeling now as an adult. Anyway, this is my first orchid that's blooming here. This is my Phalaenopsis Aphrodite. I didn't grow this one. This is one I just bought, but I love when you buy a Phalaenopsis and it's got all these buds coming in and the bloom spikes getting along, and it has just a few flowers opening. This is one of my favorite little species orchids. I have a few of them because they're really easy to find everywhere, and they bloom during the winter, which is my favorite season for orchids to bloom. And yeah, they're really easy to grow. Phalaenopsis, a lot of people grow them and find them a little bit tricky to rebloom, but I find as long as you put them near a cool window in the fall and the spring, they'll throw out some nice flower spikes, and the blooms last a really long time. They can last for up to a few months with some of them. So they're well worth the investment, I find. And when I was younger, I remember this was my first orchid, was a Phalaenopsis that my mom bought me when I was a kid at the grocery store, and I had to really beg her to buy it because it was like $50 or $60. And now you can buy these everywhere for about $20. They're almost like disposable orchids, which is kind of sad because I see them everywhere and people just toss them away, but I remember when they were quite rare. Anyway, that's my Phalaenopsis Aphrodite. This one behind is a yellow one. I lost the tag to this one, but I've had this one for about 4 years, and I will find the tag again, but I love this one because it's yellow. Yellow used to be a rare color, but now there's lots of yellow Phalaenopsis, and this one just blooms all the time. This flower spike is a new one that it just sent up this winter, but it had 2 flower spikes that were going for the last 3 years, and that one spike kept throwing out new little spikes. So you can see where these flowers have fallen off, but here you can see a node, and most likely this one will just send out another spike once all these blooms stop blooming. So I like this one because I don't really do anything special with it, and it just blooms and blooms and blooms. The next one down here, this is my Paphiopedilum Pacific Ocean. This is a huge paph, so it's about, you can see my hand right there. And I love this one because it's nice and round and big, and it blooms in the winter time. And I love all the spots, and it has these big sepals, but that big petal on the top is just like amazing, and it's nice and white. You can see in the background, it definitely has Paphiopedilum insignia in it. You can tell because of those spots and that green and the lip. And another one of the parents of this orchid is called Paphiopedilum Langley Pride, which I do own, but I haven't had it bloom yet. So I'll be curious to see how they look when that other one blooms. You can see how the parentage affects this orchid. Anyway, I love Paphiopedilums. They're very easy to grow if you get the right ones. Some of them are kind of tricky to get to flower, but you know, in my experience, I just buy them when I see them, and what they're in bloom, you get to enjoy them when they're in bloom. And then I give them a couple of years to see if they rebloom. And if they rebloom for me, I keep them. And if they don't, I give them away or sell them. I don't have the patience to really give every orchid every specific condition that they need to flower. If they flower for me, that's great. Those are my conditions. If they don't, it's time to go. I don't have time. And I actually, then after years of doing that, I have a lot of orchids that they bloom quite easily for me now. And I don't have to do anything special. They just like the environment that I provide for them. So this is a beautiful one. I really love Paphiopedilums, and I love how long they last. Some of the blooms can last like 2 to 3 months if you give them some good conditions. And so we'll see how long this one lasts for me. It's been going for a few weeks now. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I would have posted a picture, I think last week, of this one. So I really like this one. This next orchid, I did a video, I think it was in one of my videos from last year, because it bloomed this time of year last year. This one is called Phalaenopsis Paradise Ruby, and it's called Sweetie. And it has these really beautiful reddy sunset colors. And this orchid smells so good. This is one where, you know, some orchids smell, and if you get your nose in there, they have a beautiful scent. But this one, wow, it has a really, really thick and overwhelming, almost like scent that fills up my whole growing area when the lights are on and it's nice and warm down there. And it's, someone asked me to describe the smells better on my videos, but it's got this thick scent like sweet honey and a little bit like fruits. It's hard to explain orchid smells, but this one has a really that's the best way I can describe it. It's a fruity, kind of like honey sweet scent. And like I said, it's very strong. It can fill up my whole growing area, even though this flower is kind of small. It's only 2 inches. Last year, the flowers, it didn't have double flowers. It had 2 single flowers on 2 different growths, and they were bigger than they are this year. So I do find sometimes when you have multi-floral orchids, the more flowers they have, they kind of are smaller. Whereas if you have 1 bloom that year, it will be a big bloom. So this year I get 2 smaller blooms, which I'm not mad at. They look pretty. I love this orchid because of the shape of the leaves. They look perfect, like little paddles, and they grow nice and upright. And you know, most of the orchids I grow, they can take a lot of neglect. I'm not a really present parent, as you would say, for my plants. I just pick a lot of plants that can take a lot of neglect, or at least those are the ones that survive in my collection. I do buy a lot of orchids, but then, you know, not everyone grows well for me, and a lot of them do like die or suffer or get given away. So this is one of the ones that has made it, and it already has a new growth coming out right here. So hopefully it'll bloom again in the spring. But generally this one blooms in the winter. This is the 2nd year I've had it bloom, and it was the exact same time last year. It was end of January. Okay, and this last one is a really cool one. This one is called Sophrolaliocattleya Sinbuladi, and this one is called Red Beauty. Unfortunately, on the camera, it's really hard to see these shades of colors, like what they don't show true on the camera. This one is actually not as reddy orange as you see in the camera. In real life, it's got a more deep purple tone. It's really hard to capture on the camera because the camera changes the color tones. But this one is more like a purpley red, and so is this one actually. So it looks more like violet velvet in real life, and then it has this nice glowing orange lip. And look at all the buds coming out here, and it has another spike coming up here. And I'm really excited because this one is just so easy to grow. I thought this one was gonna die, to be honest, because when I got it, it had no roots. It was like a little clump, no roots, and I barely watered it all summer, and it somehow survived, and it put out 2 new growths, which I was happy about, because once there's a new growth, I know that it's gonna shoot out some new roots eventually. But I was really pleasantly surprised to see that both growths are gonna bloom throughout these nice, beautiful bloom spikes. So the whole plant is about like 2 feet tall with the spikes. It's nice and compact, very easy to grow. It likes, you know, in my grow area, it gets really hot and dry in the summer and cool and wet in the winter. It seems to like that. And one of the parents in this hybrid is Laelia anceps, which I have quite a few varieties of, but they've never bloomed for me. And I was actually getting to the point where maybe I was like going to get rid of them, but I think I'm going to give them 1 more year to see if they flower, because this orchid, because one of the parents is Laelia anceps, you can really tell by the shape of the bloom. You can just see the, you know, genetic presence of Laelia anceps in the bloom shape and the way the spikes are and the amount of bloom. So I'm going to give them 1 more year and see if they do bloom for me. But anyway, this one's given me hope because it's really pretty. And it's going to have so many flowers. And it does bloom in the winter. That's when Laelia anceps blooms. So we'll see. Anyway, that's the whole group of them now that they're blooming together. I wish I had a spot where I could keep them all together like this, but I just place them around the house when they are blooming. So I just have little areas where, you know, I go and I get to enjoy the blooms when I'm spending time at home in these cold, wet months. And yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment down below. See you next time.